Ow!
Thanks a lot. We've learned a lot of great new things so far. What I want to talk to you about more than anything right now is what hasn't been talked about. I take out these earplugs. I heard a lot of things, and a lot of them sounded a lot different. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So my book review starts. No. The idea of Occupy Wall Street, I think, is interesting thing for me because I remember WTO back in the day. No one hardly remembers it, but no, that's not true. You remember, but we all remember. But it was an interesting thing happened for me there that I think kind of reflects what's happening now. And I remember it was the beginning of this whole protest in Seattle, and there was a line of policemen, kind of blocking off 2 blocks leading to the convention center, and there were kind of two, and this was like an intersection downtown Seattle, and two streets were backed up with people on either side, and then 2 streets were blocked off by police. Nothing had really happened yet, and they were all in riot gear, and I remember people were screaming, take off your masks, take off your helmet, take off your mask. And then eventually the captain of the police took off his helmet and started talking to this organizer, this gentleman who must have been around for many other protests and had a lot of experience just keeping people calm. And I remember people clapping. They were talking. I was like, wow, this is cool. Look at that. These 2 guys are just talking. Who knew that was possible? And I didn't, not that I think that it's not possible, I just thought that, it would just kind of stay the way it is, just kind of stagnant until something happened. So with that kind of false hope, I was like, oh, this is going to be great, this is going to be great, we're cool. I started talking with my friend, and then there was this other guy that was with us that had just come back from Iraq. And I remember the chief disappears at one point, and then a megaphone, you can hear a megaphone, and they're saying, we're gonna launch tear gas. You should probably leave if you don't want to be tear gassed. It's pretty nice of them. And I remember the guy from Iraq, he was like, oh, don't worry about it, man, just cover your mouth and nose and stay really low, the gas rises, so it'll be fine. And I was like, okay, well, this guy must know. And after a few tense moments, I remember the canisters started flying, and this was the weirdest part. The tear gas, happened as tear gas does, and we've all probably experienced some form of it or another. And I was like, wow, this stuff is very unpleasant. It's true. I understand why it's a deterrent now. And so I just turned around and we just started, running the opposite way from the intersection, and got to about a block away, and then there was this van parked outside, and there were people around in this intersection with this van with a sound system, and people were dancing, and there's a sound system with a DJ inside the van just like playing like techno, and I was like, what's happening right now? This is incredible. It was like a block away there's this thing happening, and then a block away there's essentially a Ferris Bueller moment. And so the guy recognized me. He was like, hey, you want to sing something? I was like, oh, sure. So I grabbed the mic and I had a Donkashane Ferris Bueller moment, and I was singing, and I just thought in that moment, this was amazing, but what's happening? Why are these 2 things happening right now? 2 unstructured events, things that are very irregular, that aren't to be expected in civil society. And I realized that oftentimes these are symptoms of things that are needing to change. And I think that it's interesting to see that systems aren't permanent in our scale that we live on, in our lifespan, in the history that we read about, people tell us about, things change dramatically. And I think that we can be very comfortable in what we do to a certain extent, especially if you've lived in the 80s. It really, as an American, you really had this false sense of foreverness, you know, the sustainability of this lifestyle. And suddenly things are very unstable, and we're seeing pretty dramatic shifts, instantaneous shifts. And of course, a lot of this is being fueled by the ability to communicate at instantaneous speed. So there's this unified kind of global reaction to something that is seemingly needing attention to. And I think all of us as human beings are essentially explorers. And when we're denied our ability to explore, which is being locked into debt or to working in a circular fashion, forced to essentially work constantly like a shark. If you stop, you'll sink. You know how it is in New York. It's basically work, work, work. It's easy to overlook things. And I think that detachment or that disconnection from an explorative mindset starts to bring into question needs that we have that are very primal and, dare I say, spiritual. I think that something that's happening not too far from here and other places around the country are an interesting mix, I have to admit. There are some people that are there. It brings along an aspect of a type of person that's just kind of hanging out, and you're wondering, like, what is this guy doing exactly? I mean, there are these kind of like cats that hang out that you're like, I don't know what these guys, I feel, but what are you, I'm not sure what you're doing, but that's cool, you're getting beer, that's cool, you're hanging out. So there is that, but I think that the important thing, what's exciting to me, is that within our lifetimes, I think that we can participate, as has been mentioned before this time that I'm mentioning currently right now, is that there is an opportunity for change. And I think that I'm not so much invested in particulars, like in a political sense. I'm more of a humanist, and I'm just interested in seeing what we do as collectives and the availability that we have to all of the riches that we all possess, even though we are poor. We have so many material riches around us, and how do we utilize those things and make those efficient? So with that, I wrote a quick poem about occupation and how important it is to see negative space and then go inside of it and kind of occupy it, because it's necessary sometimes. You know, sometimes space needs to be occupied, guys. I know we have a lot of parks and a lot of people who enjoy parks, but the people who have parks the most are the people that use them every day. Now, that's not one person, that's not two people, that's not an entire people. It's the longevity of those willing to take the advantage that they have. Okay? So, here we go. Namaste. Occupation. How do you occupy my mind at night? Occupation is not a fragrance by some debut celebutante. Occupation is not a way to behave at a dinner table. Occupation is not the ability to take over what is not rightly yours. But I tell you, occupation is a flavor that is more creamy smooth than chocolate cake, more creamy smooth than a nice iced hot fudge sundae, more than two people falling in love for the third time, realizing that they could once more again. Occupation. How does it thee, thine, my own mind occupy? Occupy the porcupine. Does the porcupine occupy? Does the porcupine occupy by the threat of danger? These are the days of occupation. No more have people sided with the victorious other than now to understand that we are much less than we could ever imagine. And that is an important thing to realize. For that which you are not is more powerful than that which you will become. Because that is potential, and that is something that nothing can divide or conquer, or make so much so as to say, I'm just saying, to say, that here withal, as do all do they, fall throughout the night, for she slept as she did every night. Johnny whistling wistfully in the night, returning, he more than ever, a victim of the dark and wind, and the owl that does hoot in the darkness. Eyes so reflective, glowing seemingly, evil intent. Doth he not notice the swing that doth swing under branch of old elm tree in abandoned house at end of lot? Did not he hear the creak of floorboard? These are not to say occupations are predispositions, for demystifying these predispositions is not the same thing as occupying, for occupying is simply an act of displacement. So, here is the key question. Or, could we? And these are the things that we need to consider. I lend my creativity to the movement because the creativity is really harnessing a creativity that is all around us constantly. I lend it freely because I never could control it, and I can't stop it, and therefore I must give it to someone. Why not to people who are actually doing things? If I had to pick a job, I wouldn't pick a systems worker, because if the system crashes, there's no skill left. An engineer, on the other hand, they are the ones. So listen, in closing, whether you're a woo-woo or a computer programmer, you must realize that all the systems that are being worked upon right now, and I'm saying this, and I know many of you are saying, and that's fine. But what's most important is to think inside the box, shift the box, maybe cut a line in it at a certain place, and then just kind of disconfigure the line to show that there is a new openness and the destruction of the former shape, in order to give way to the freedom of expression of chaos, which it intrinsically wants to be, not held therein by fear or desire. Sameness or certitude does create the concreteness that is and belies our sense of what is comfortable. We, as humans and as people, must come together to realize everything is pretty cool. But it could be cooler. Thank you.